Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Upside Swings NBA Draft Podcast, the podcast, The High Ceiling. I'm your host, Bryce Hendricks, joined as always with the great Cooper Klein. And we're excited. We're finally moved on from point guards. Not that we won't talk about point guards again. We will do another point guard pod here soon. I'm waiting to see if Tyler Tanner and Ibuka Okori are going to stay in the draft. As soon as I get confirmation that they're in the draft for sure, we'll probably fast track that point guard pod. With those two and Sturts, and there's a couple other guys, but we're trying to stay in that lane of guys who were, pretty sure are going to be in the draft. Both these guys that we're going to talk about today are certainly going to be in the draft. We were going to do three guys, but as we were doing this, I think we found out that we had enough to say on just two, that we wanted to spend enough time on it. So we're excited about that. Mr. Fundamental, Cooper Klein, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. This was one of the watching experiences of all time. I got to watch probably the worst game of like high level college basketball I've seen in years in the Kansas UNC game. That was an actual nightmare of a watch for between two top players. And then you get to go watch Yaxel and you watch probably the best college basketball team of the last decade play. It's just it was really, really fun. It was a great distraction from my three finals I got coming up, and ready to hop into this. How are you doing?
I'm great. Very busy, but enjoying the grind, as they say. And I was really excited to do these guys, and I'm excited to talk about them, but I do feel like my feelings are maybe different than I expected them to be coming into it. To be honest, I kind of thought I'd end up with Caleb Wilson in my top three somehow, and I guess spoiler alert, but I'm probably not going to. So let's jump into that. Let's talk about Caleb Wilson here. Caleb Wilson, a very interesting player. EYBL teammates with Cam Boozer, but was like the seventh leading scorer on that team. Now, some of that was, I think he started the EYBL season playing with a different EYBL team and then changed to Knight Riders at the end. I don't know all the story there. And to be honest, with the time I had to research Caleb, I wanted to focus on the game. I wasn't doing a ton of ancillary stuff. So I can't tell you the story, but Caleb Wilson listed at 6'9", 205. That's probably about accurate, 6'9"-ish. I would guess a plus wingspan. He at least plays like he has a plus wingspan. I couldn't tell you how big, but sure seems like it. He's a July 18th, 2006 birthday, which means he's 19 years old. He will turn 20 a little bit before his rookie season. His rookie season will be his age 20 season. Had a really, really good freshman season at North Carolina this year. Now, he only played in 24 games. His season was cut short by a hand injury. But as someone who spent the whole year at 19, he played 31.3 minutes a game, averaged 19.8 points on 57.8, 25.9, 71.3 shooting splits, grabbed 9.4 total rebounds, and 2.8 offensive rebounds as a part of that, 2.7 assists, 1.5 steals, 1.4 blocks, 2 turnovers. That's a lot of turnovers. We'll talk about that. But less than 2 fouls a game, which is, kind of nice, actually. I think we'll talk about the good and the bad of his foul rate, I'm sure. But some more advanced stats on Bart. He had a 12.7 BPM. That's really good. It's got to be amongst the top freshmen in the country. 28.8 usage rate. That's really high. I think that's way higher than people expected. I think when people were talking about what he was going to be, that was not something people expected. 59% effective field goal rate, 62.6 true shooting, both good numbers. A 10.5 offensive rebound rate, that's a really good number. 22.2% defensive rebound rate. 18.1 assist rate to a 12.6 turnover rate, that's a 1.4 assist to turnover. 4.4 block rate, 2.8 steal rate. Both those numbers good. We're going to contextualize just how good or maybe not good. I don't want to say not good, but I want to contextualize that block rate. I think there's a lot to talk about there. 61.6 free throw rate is really good. And again, he shot fairly okay on those free throws, 71.3% on 181 total. He dunked 67 times, though he did miss 10 dunks. It's a lot of dunks to miss. But and I'll talk about this when we get to his offense. There's some noise in that. Shot 72.3% on 159 close twos, 44.4% on 108 long twos. The real worrying stat is he only took 27 threes on the year, shot 25.9% on them, and that's only 2.1 3-point attempts per 100. Coop, let's walk through the statistical profile first, and then I the place to start is definitely going to be on his defense. But as you look through the stats profile, what stood out to you?
One of the things is, I mean, obviously it's small sample size, but his true shooting and effective field goal percentage did fall off against better comp. And I think you can see that in the tape when he's able to just run guys off the floor. I think he's just so much more effective, and it opens up the rest of his game in a very different way. Also, his offensive rebounds dropped the harder comp he plays. I was really surprised that he had an 18 assist percentage. But when you are watching the games, there's every half you're gonna get a pass or two that's just oh, that kind of came out of nowhere. We'll talk about whether it's schemed or whether it's truly feel or post hub stuff. But there's a lot of really intriguing stuff in here that I think in a vacuum is far more interesting than it comes out on the film. And I think that's kind of going to be what most of this discussion is going to be colored by.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the stats profile, right, and you just assume that this is some crazy high energy player. And as we transition to the defense, and this goes back to EYBL to me. There's only a couple high school games on Synergy. I didn't go back and watch his high school stuff. I'm sure there's more on YouTube if I, really wanted to dig down that rabbit hole. But I went back and watched the EYBL. I would never say he really strikes me as this crazy high energy guy, and that kind of shows when you filter it to top 50 comp. His true shooting and effective field goal rate drop a ton. Effective field goal rate down to 53.4, true shooting down to 57. His offense rebound rate drops to 7, block rate drops to 3.8, but the steal rate does jump up to 3.2. Free throw rate is also is another huge faller here, in that it drops to 47.1. Now that's still a really good number, but it does drop. And he shoots worse on close twos. This is someone who, at least for stretches of his statistical profile, built it up by beating up on some smaller teams. And I think that stands out when you go through and watch his games. He does better against shittier comp. Now, I think that sometimes this stuff can be overrated. If numbers are still good, like I mentioned, the free throw rate, that's still a good number, even if it's not an insane number anymore against top 50. I don't tend to, good players do beat up on bad competition more. That's what good players do. The concern is, the efficiencies dropping outside of what I would call good numbers for a bigger guy. And so there is definitely a concern with top 50 stuff there. There's always noise in this. College basketball is a small sample size. A whole college basketball season is literally, a third of an NBA season. And so I think people can sometimes get very caught up in that stuff too much, but I do think there is at least something worth noting there about the fall off. I want to start on the defense because I think that's not only the sell, for him, but the path to stardom for Caleb Wilson is going to be about him being a good enough offensive player for the type of defender he is. And I was both underwhelmed by what I saw on tape as compared to the statistical profile. And also, I left thinking that he's going to probably be a really good NBA defender. So there's kind of this weird back and forth in my mind. Coop, I want to throw it to you first here. Where do you want to start on the defense?
So I think let's talk about him in rotation as a low man, and just kind of, because I think a lot of the discussion is going to be colored also by I don't think he's a 5 I mean, ideally, maybe he can be, but he's just not really there. I don't think he's physical enough to be a five man. I don't think, especially in the modern NBA, he'll be able to guard most fives. So you're mostly going to be thinking about him in terms of help and in terms of, doing a little bit of switching, moving around on the perimeter, playing as the low man. And I was like extremely disappointed from the way he's like discussed in a lot of these rotations. I think he's always like a true step behind on plays. I think his recognition is really far behind a lot of guys, even in this class. He is a freshman, so there's some room for like give him some time. But he's the thing that like really drives me nuts is he is always slow as the low man. He's always going to be behind the play. He is almost never going to rotate into position and then, contest or block. He's usually going to be behind. He gives up a ton. I mean, even with like two massive players, UNC was like still not, I mean, as far as I know, I'd have to pull up the stats, but like a particularly great 2-point interior defense, especially against good teams. At least the games I watched, but like they were very exploitable in a sense. And he doesn't have any of the technique at the moment to like really make up for this in a real way. His footwork isn't great. His biomechanics are like really lacking for a guy this big. I think I was texting Bryce when I was like, he kind of moves like a baby gazelle. And that kind of combined, like obviously you think like in the open court, you think about a guy like a Sange and it's like, oh, he moves like a gazelle. And it's like, sure, he has these moments and he just he's really uncoordinated in like a very real way. And that sometimes happens with these guys and then they come into the league and they get their time. But I mean, we've seen these kinds of guys struggle in the league, like in Usman Garuba, right? Who was, I think, a better defensive feel guy, but just was not grown into his body yet. I mean, we've seen it with a guy like Tari Eason. But Tari's not as big and not as long as Caleb Wilson. And even he's struggled a ton with that translation over to the NBA. And I just think defensively, I don't think he has the feel or technique to play the five or the size. Honestly, I don't think he's like such an overwhelming athlete that he can play the five full time, at least defensively. And I don't think that he has enough feel to play the four in a very real way. It's a very strange situation for someone who's like, and it's also like combined with, you talked about the motor. He's not flying around the court all the time and making up for the fact that he's missing rotations with like, oh, I'm going to go help. Oh, I'm going to go like close out and completely wall off the paint. He'll miss something and then he'll just kind of float around. And he's not going to get back to his guy. Just really strange. It's a really strange experience because there's the plays where he's like, he block hunts a lot, right? Where he's able to like let you beat him and then he'll stay on your hip. But he almost never, every single time he has to fully flip his hips, he doesn't get the block. Every single time he can like start with his hips twisted and then kind of like finish turning them, he can get these crazy swats. He can, deter you. But that block rate being only 4.4 as like a mega athlete, high motor guy with his length, his size, his athleticism, super alarming because that's like all he was asked to do a lot of plays is like wall off the paint, wall off the rim. And he like couldn't do it at times.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Caleb defensively, I want to start this by giving my thoughts on the good because I do think he is going to be a good NBA defender. But I want to talk about, I just think the path is more narrow than I expected it to be. His feet are really clever and he could really move laterally, even though he doesn't like sit in a stance. Like aesthetically, he doesn't move how I want him to. Like he doesn't sit in a stance with his giant long arms out. He likes to kind of stand up with his hands down by his side all the time. And he's doing this thing where like I hate when guys do this, but like their arms just like kind of move in jolts side to side instead of actually just getting their hands out. This is in contrast to someone like Yaxel, who we'll talk about this, but Lindenberg is like crazy technically sound while not being like a crazy mover. And Wilson's the opposite. He is like just a crazy lateral mover, in my opinion, with crazy naturally clever feet. But he doesn't like really sit in a stance or impose his will in the way I want him to yet. You know who he kind of reminded me of as a lateral mover? Victor Wembanyama. And obviously that's like weird because Wemby's 7'5" or whatever, but like just in that, like just naturally the way the way their feet move and their hips flip like in such a fluid way. I think that's kind of who he reminds me of a little bit. If you just watch his highlights, you're gonna think he's like an insane defender. Like every once in a while he'll crash in for like a crazy block, or he'll like, you know, specifically some of the stuff he can do. Like he has really good hand-eye coordination and really long arms. I think, again, I don't have an exact wingspan measurement, but my guess at the combine he comes in 6'9" in shoes, probably a 7'2", 7'3" wingspan. And even if he's not actually that long, he plays that long, so it doesn't bother me a ton. But he has really good hands to just like kind of like he gets a lot of pokes and tips on the ball without having to like reaching himself crazy out of position. You know, when he's three-quartering the post, he has just a natural ability to just get his hand on the ball. But his instincts kind of all show themselves like in his feet and his movement patterns, but not many of his steals or blocks are like great positioning or great reads. Like he doesn't have the LSU Tari Eason, like I'm just gonna blow up an action because I see it. I know what you're doing, and I'm just gonna beat the offense to where it's going so that you have no choice but to turn it over. It's more just like he kind of has this make something out of nothing stuff, or again, like his ability to kind of be in the right place, or not in the right place, but his ability to just kind of move on the ball, just kind of overwhelm some guys. A shocking amount of his stocks come on the ball, which in some ways is really good. It's really good that he can be guarding someone in a one-on-one scenario and just poke the ball away from them, including guards sometimes. Like that's great. It's great that he can just swallow someone up in such a way that he's going to get a block on the ball. But he's not like this like elite low man rotator. In fact, he's pretty late, you know, all the time. North Carolina was a really good rim defense this year. Actually, they were 14th in the country. But I think most of that was Vassar and not him. Just being frank about it. He could be a deterrent at times, but that was more college guards and undersized wings being scared of him in theory than him actually being in a position to deter them. He is a good vertical athlete who can, you know, get blocks despite being late in rotation. Like that's good, right? It's good that he can be late and still cover up for that. Like all those things are good. But I think what I'm getting at is that he's much more of like a Tumani Kamara type defender, which is obviously a very good defender. Don't get me wrong. But where he's like a switch everything on the ball type of guy, I think he can kind of be a shutdown corner. But the problem with him as a shutdown corner is he doesn't get through screens. He dies on every screen. So he has to be in a scheme where he's switching, and where there's also not a ton of need for him to really develop his his off-ball feel and reads to maximize his defensive role. I don't think he's going to be like an awful like help defender. Like I think he tried, but he's either too close to his man or he loses his man. Like he's ball watching. Like he'll flash a good dig, but then he'll just lose his man and give up inside positioning for an offensive rebound. And he's also not like very physically imposing. Like he's not willing to just like be really tough and just like get up into someone and bother him. Those are things that I think can develop a little bit, but I don't think he's like this world-beating off-ball defender. I think he's much closer, like I said, to Monty Kamara, a Herb Jones. I'm trying to think of like a bigger version of this because those guys are more wingy forwards and he's more of like a forward big. But you know, a lot of teams want to switch everything in the playoffs, right? he can do that. You know, a good example of who he's kind of like is Dean Wade. I think he's very Dean Wade-esque defensively. He doesn't have the heft of Wade yet, but I think he'll put on some weight in his frame and be a fairly good Dean Wade type defender. But who he's not defensively is like a Scotty Barnes or a Draymond Green or those truly, truly all world forward defenders where he's like, man, he's just going to make some crazy rotational blocks and he's going to get steals by just knowing what you're going to do. Like his processing isn't that quick. His understanding of where to be is not that great. He messes up rotations fairly frequently, which again, for his age is not like the end of the world in terms of his ability to be a competent NBA defender, but it doesn't point to a lot of upside to me in terms of being that type of world beating defender. Does that like track to you, Coop, or do you have anything you want to push back on there?
I think even putting him in like the Herb Jones, I don't know. Herb is just like I am calling him Herb because he used to get on my ass for calling him Herb Jones, but I'm being purposeful here. Herb is like an all world stopper and like still really good off ball in like a lot of ways. I do think that a lot of NBA defense comes down to, do you care and do you have the requisite athleticism? And I don't doubt that from Caleb Wilson at all. It's just, I think it's going to take a really long time and a lot of development. And like, I don't think this is a guy who could like go to Brooklyn, right? And like spend years on a bad team. And then one day it's just going to like click. You know, we've even seen with like, I was thinking about him a lot in terms of like Jalen Duren, right? I think they played a similar amount of minutes in college. They dunk the ball about the same amount of times. They're kind of interesting as like a post hub who doesn't dribble. They have some like really crazy athletic stuff. But like Duren had almost a 10 block rate in college and was a ridiculous, like overwhelming athlete. And I do kind of like Duren has really struggled to be a good, even like a neutral defender in the NBA because his positioning and his understanding of defense is so poor, right? I think Duren's a little bit more of like a true five in a lot of ways, but I think this is what keeps, like, in theory, I think Wilson, as like the kind of mover he is, could be this really interesting small ball option as a five who can like really move. He's got long arms, he can switch, but his positioning and his processing speed will keep him from being that. Also, he's just not that strong. He's not that big, right? And I do think that the 4 and the 5 are such hard positions to play NBA defense at. That's where teams are going to attack you. You know, oh, that maybe they won't ISO you, but they're going to keep you moving, you know, off the ball on like a Duncan Robinson off a switch or something if you have to switch every possession because your stuff is so bad. And I just really worry that he's going to struggle in like a way that, you know, even someone like they're very different players, but like a Julian Strother, right? Strother could not play off-ball defense in college, but he was like good on the ball, and you can like scheme ways into that. I do worry that like it's going to be really hard to scheme him into winning basketball for a long time because he's just so far behind the 8 ball in a lot of ways.
I'm going to push back. I think he can play winning defense early in switch everything schemes. Now there's going to be little bits he's giving up, but if or at least switching through fourth, like he at least like when he sees what's in front of him, he plays. So like I don't think it's actually a motor thing. I think it's more of a processing thing with him. Like he just doesn't really seem to. I think the feel gets a little bit overrated because he throws some nice passes and like again the steal and block rates sometimes are indicative of feel. I don't think he's like crazy high feel, and I think he's smart, but I think the processing is slow, and so he is kind of in this weird in between where he's not going to be a positive help defender. and not a lot of teams want to switch everything in the regular season, but I think he can already be a pretty good switch guy. And my guess is that he will learn some modicum of screen nav when it's being asked of him. I think the bigger thing with what UNC and truthfully what a lot of the two big teams were trying to do this year outside of like an Arizona is they wanted to switch everything with the idea being that if you get by our one big, we're always going to find ways to get our other big back by the rim. Even Michigan with Ade Mara did a lot of switching. Now, sometimes they would switch four and drop one, but UNC did a lot of switching, a lot. And Caleb was really good on like Cam Boozer. Even though Cam Boozer is way stronger and would try to just out physical him, like I thought Caleb was legitimately really good in those one-on-one matchups. He had multiple times this year where he would close down and then stick with guards on like their attacks off the dribble. And so I think that he will be a good defender even early in his career. I just think it's going to look different than I think some people do. Like I think he's going to be much more of a I think he's much closer defensively if he's a big to Onyeka Okongwu than he is like Evan Mobley, which he's gotten compared to. He has the same type of movement skills as Mobley, but he does not have the same type of rim protection at all. I think like I honestly think like there's some Okongwu here in that like he can be your up to the level, switch some stuff big. Now he's not physical enough to be a 5 right now. Like just truthfully, he's going to get mashed to death, and specifically on the boards. Rebounding has become so important. And like the biggest difference, I've seen people comparing to like Colin Murray Boyles too. And I missed on Boyles and that I was too low. Like I can already tell year one I was too low. And that's fine. That's okay. I'm learning from that. Boyles had way more heft. The biggest thing that's working for Boyles right now is he just can't actually play the 5. Like even though he's not some crazy vertical athlete, like he moves well enough to be in switch everything stuff late in the playoffs. He's a good enough decision maker to cover for his lack of shooting in the half court offense. He gets offensive rebounds and he can actually like box out a bigger guy here and there. He can box out a Jared Allen. He can box out potentially a Joel Embiid had they have gotten there or whatever, right? I'm like Caleb Wilson can't do that right now. So that's why I'm saying like Onyeka Okongwu over like a CMB right now. Now Okongwu, I mean, truthfully, the reason he's in the league and playing so well right now is that he's making shots. And Okongwu was a better shot blocker in college, but I actually kind of got a lot of Okongwu vibes when watching Caleb Wilson. I liked Onyeka a lot back in the day, and I think that like that is more what the role is more to me though. He's like a 4-5 kind of switch guy. He's not truly a wing like shutdown guy right now because he can't get through screens and he doesn't have the help instincts you need or the rebounding you need to be a true 5. And so that is a question for me. But I think he's good enough at the other stuff that there is still all defense upside here, even if I agree that it's not the type of defense that I think is most valuable, being truthful. And I think that has shown itself in the league at times. Like this is not the most valuable kind of defense. You either want elite perimeter shutdownness, particularly with some strength, or you want some real plus rim protection, and he's not really either of those, but I think he can do a good job on some of the best guys in isolation, and he can provide you enough in time with either some help stuff or learning to get a little bit better, at least screen nav on like bigger guys, right? If he's guarding KD, right, like getting through some screens on a guy like that, I think there's possibility. So again, there's questions here. I'm not saying that he's a perfect defender, but I do think he's going to be a good one. But I was shocked because I kind of thought he was going to be a world beater. Coop, do you have anything else you want to push back on me again? If anything else on the defense, say it. But then let's talk some about the offense and start by how he goes about scoring.
Yeah. So defensively, I think the thing with this, you talked about him as like a switch guy. And I think that my worry would be that teams, sure, it matters, but teams you can't run switch as a base defense. anymore. Sure, you need it down the stretch, and I think that that's really important. Um, but I don't even think he can like play at the level of screens at the moment against NBA level players. I think he's really jumpy. He bites on a lot of stuff. He gets out of position really easily. Guys can, turn the corner and get like penetrate pretty easily, and you can fool him with a lot of up fakes. You can kick out. You can get him out of position pretty easily because he is kind of sitting there trying to block your shot, unsuccessfully a lot of the time. He is the kind of guy defensively that I would have really liked 4 years ago, right? Where it's like he has all the tools in the world, everything's there in theory, but he's just not all the way there yet. And a lot of these guys just struggle at the next level, especially at the big man spot. Um, it's just going to be really hard. And especially if he goes to a bad developmental team, which is likely because he's probably going to go top 4, that he's not going to get the proper infrastructure to develop in, winning habits. I could see him being like a Jeremy Grant level guy in some ways on the right team. He's really locked in. And, like you said, I don't think that it's like a lack of motor thing. I think it's more of he just has to be used in the correct ways. But like I think that there's a lot of variance here that there isn't with a lot of truly elite defenders with what he does. And there's obviously upside, but the more I watched, the less sure I was that he was going to do anything other than like play pretty good isolation defense at the NBA level against a lot of different guys. And that's really worrying. So, I mean, that's about it on the defense.
All right. So my Caleb Wilson is a big theory as Coop goes away. So I'm gonna be ranting here for a minute. So if you guys are tired of my voice, feel free to skip ahead until Coop is back. But I hand tracked every Caleb Wilson rim attempt from his freshman year of college. And I posted this on Twitter, but my Twitter not very popping anymore. That's okay. Draft Twitter is dead theory. Stay strong. And what I noticed strongly is that 1, he's a bad non-dunk finisher, and 2, he's not really good at self-creating his rim attempts, at least not in any type of perimeter sense. So a couple things on assisted layups or missed shots that would have been assist, right? Passes directly to a shot for him. And I tried to be very broad with the term self-created. Lots of times guys are given assist for post entries, unless it was like a high-low pass. I wasn't counting that as an assist. If Caleb had to make a move, I counted it as self-created. That includes in transition. So there's a couple times where he kind of got to hit ahead. He really only had to beat one guy. But if he beat that guy, I counted it as self-created. Okay. There's obvious errors with any type of hand tracking, but Synergy makes errors. They counted a Seth Lundy transition layup as a Caleb Wilson rim attempt on Synergy. So like there's always errors in any type of stat profile you do. I tried to be as generous to Caleb as possible here. On assisted layups, he was 49 for 65. That's really good. He had 36 dunks. Really good. Caught lobs. He could get up off 1 or 2. He dunked in a crowd at times. Right. That's a good number. Offensive rebounds, those are in some way self-created, right? He was 27 for 33 with 13 dunks. Okay, that's good. Self-created transition, again, like I said, this is fairly broad. There's a lot of these that you would call assisted, but I try to give him the benefit of the doubt. He was 17 for 22 with 10 dunks. Okay, a lot of those dunks were off his own steal, which is great. It's great that he can get a steal and go right out and dunk. His self-created post looks, he was 20 for 34 with 7 dunks. That's an okay number. Not great. Doesn't really suggest to me that he's going to get a ton of like post touches in the league, but it's okay. Self-created drives. This is perimeter drives where he has to beat someone. A lot of these are in trail situations. Sometimes it's a true ISO. But even a closeout attack, I counted. He was 6 for 23 with only 1 dunk. That 1 dunk came off a play where he double dribbled and the refs didn't call it. And so he basically got a free lane to the rim. But he did dunk all over Jackson Kohler, I think. I think that's what it was. Maybe it was the other white big from Michigan State, but that's cool. You know, he dunked all over that guy. But what I'm trying to say here, when you combine that with his lack of shooting and what I would call right now a fairly overrated handle, I think he's a big. I think offensively he's a big. The player he reminded me the most of offensively is like a more athletic, healthier Jared Vanderbilt, which is obviously like not a great sign. But that's kind of who I thought of, right? He's a really, really positive 2 foot leaper. I mean, getting as many dunks as he did in the tight spacing confines of this North Carolina team was good. He was hurt by the fact that his guards were not very good. The best passer on this team was probably Henry Vassar, who set him up quite a few times in a couple like snug pick and rolls between the two of them where Vassar's throwing this lob over the top that was like disgusting. But he is not someone who is self-creating his own rim attempts. Just not. He just doesn't have that. He's the handle is not real. Anyone who's comparing him to Kevin Durant, or I've seen Giannis, I've seen all these names. It's not who he is. Like just point blank. He's not even Colin Murray Boyles in terms of handle. Honestly, he's probably not even Jared Vanderbilt in terms of handle. I think I think that he is a true like old school four who does not have a ton of craft. His post scoring is 90%. He wants to catch an immediately baseline spin. And if he has body contact, he can spin that and get a dunk. He likes his face up middies. That's okay. He is very, very rarely creating advantage off the dribble. And there's two reasons for that. One, I don't think the handle is particularly good. He can dribble, but it's also kind of fumbly. It's not particularly quick. He doesn't explode out of it. But two, he has no bend. He has absolutely no bend or flexibility in his core and his hips. He is super upright when he's trying to drive. And that combines with his fairly skinny frame and lack of strength right now to just make it where he can't get through people. There's a little, I was low on Scotty Barnes in general, and obviously I've been wrong about that. There's a little bit of that there where Scotty, I kind of didn't love his handle either. He was a better handler than Caleb, but Scotty has figured out how to just go through people. If there's an upside for Caleb as a star offensive player, it's just that he's going to put on weight and just start to go through people. But I still think that he's not a particularly positive off the dribble advantage creator. I don't think he ever will be. I think he's always going to be a somewhat dependent player. And we'll talk about the shot in a little bit, but that puts a lot more pressure on that, right? He can be a good dunker spot guy. He can be a really plus. I think he's a really good offensive rebounder. A couple of the best dunks I've seen in the last couple of years were his tip dunks. He had a couple that were just disgusting, absolutely mind-boggling tip dunks. All that is great. I think that's great stuff. He has, that's when he looks like a really high motor player. Again, when his mind can zero in, he can be a high motor player, but he really lacks physicality right now. He's not fighting for position in the post super well. He doesn't set very hard screens. I don't know. I'm just not all the way in on a lot of the stuff offensively, other than he'll be a dunker spot guy. He's a great transition player. He's super fast. He is electric there. And when there's just one guy to beat and he can use these pickups and he has enough moves in the bag that he's not an unskilled, completely unskilled transition player. But other than that, I don't think there's a lot of utility here with the ball in his hands or as a perimeter player at all. Coop, where are you at with his offense and specifically right now, kind of how he scores?
I hate the post stuff. They spent a lot of time with him just sitting in the post, trying to box out as hard as possible on these guys who are bigger than him, so he could try and drop step into a dunk. And if somebody knows the scouting report on him and that he's going to try to do that. He's like basically forced into like a fading pull up midi. And he's got some touch on it, but it's not something that I would be enthralled with at all. If I was an NBA team, this is not like, I don't even think he's like as good a post scorer as like Jabari Smith. Jabari Smith, who is so bad at dribbling that he does not even get post touches in the NBA, but he can hit them. You know, if you can set him up, he can actually knock them down. I don't think Wilson is even like that level of guy. In terms of like the post scoring, I think his best highlights are both the transition stuff, and then when he's able to just kind of like, there's a blown up defensive coverage and he can just dive as hard as he wants to the rim, and he's just so fast that the opposing team can't rotate. So like stuff like that, I think he's able to just really do great. I think there's a world where, because of like the standstill passing, that he could be like a DHO scoring threat one day, where he can just kind of get the ball and like go to initiate this action. They blow a defensive coverage and he can just sprint downhill as hard as he can. I agree with you. The handle isn't good. I think there's like no manipulation. He fumbles the ball a lot. It's the same as on defense. I think he's really uncoordinated. Just kind of like has these really weird movement patterns that you kind of touched on. I don't love it. I don't. I don't like. I get nervous every single time I watch him dribble a basketball, which is not super inspiring. It's the same kind of feeling you get watching Tari Eason dribble a basketball, where it's just like, let's give it up to somebody else. Just drives me crazy. I'll let you talk more on the outside shot, but it's not really something that I'm indexing for with him, like potential wise. He's got kind of a similar, he kind of reminds me of like a Marquise Chris or a Noah Vonleh in this way, where it's like, oh, he hit a few and he took a few and he can kind of hit his free throws, but there's literally basically no history and no world to me where he's like a good plus 3-point shooter.
Yep, I think I agree. So I in college he only took 23 off the catch jumpers, shot 26.1% on those, 26 off the dribble jumpers. That's a little better, 34.6. But a lot of those are twos, right? 34th percentile on off the dribble shots, still not great. 17 U at EYBL, 34 off the catch jumpers, 20.6%, 16 off the dribble, 37.5%. I think most of his off the dribble jumpers are the defense is just giving it to you. The person he reminds me most of as a shooter is Tari Eason. And Tari Eason's shooting development has been slow going, but he can make his open corner threes. Now, Tari spent 2 years in college, and during that final year, right, shot 35.9% on okay volume, I guess, at least better than Caleb's. My guess with Caleb is that he makes some open corner shots, and that's about it. And he's never actually a gravity well out there, which is, truthfully for him offensively, if he can make the open corner shots and then also be the type of guy who can cut out of the corner when his guy turns his head, like that's a path towards sustainable offense, but it just puts a lot of pressure on the defense to be good. And really good, right? It can't just be passable. It has to be really good. My guess is that he's again really a 4. He can do some like decision making stuff. There's these flashes of good passes, especially out of the post or on a standstill. He'll flash like a whole cross court skip. He's not really doing it much off the dribble. I think the processing is fairly slow, but there are times where, like every once in a while, like there's this one play where he got I don't think he got the offensive rebound, but he ended up corralling the offensive rebound. He takes 2 dribbles with his left hand downhill and then passes on the move to an open shooter in the corner. Like that, like there's those signs of just like the requisite level of feel. But again, when I mentioned, someone like Tari was just a way more productive defensive player as like this type of undersized 4, or not undersized 4, excuse me, like kind of, he was also at LSU kind of like an undersized 5 type of guy. I think Wilson is better than Tari in certain ways, and I just think he's a more explosive athlete. He's more likely to be a threat around the rim. But I don't think he's like a true connector, because I like, if you're playing him on the perimeter, like above the break, what is he doing? Like, again, I think about a Colin Murray Boyles. Colin Murray Boyles, while not was not a, again, I don't want to completely oversell my evaluation. I think I was still right on a lot of things with him if you go back and listen to that pod. But he's like, at least can like handle and beat someone downhill, like turn down a DHO here and there in a way that I just don't think Caleb can. And, so his utility as a more overall perimeter player is questionable. And even if he like, at what point is the shooting not worth it if what he's giving you most offensively is offensive rebounding? Like, a part of me feels like he should just be stashed in the corner or used in very simple actions, because you want him to be able to crash hard for offensive rebounds, and then hopefully get to a point where he's picking up the ball fairly early, right? Like, in an ideal world for him, he's like a 35% open corner shooter guy on like 2 or 3 attempts a game. Then he attacks the glass, gets you a couple offensive rebounds. And if he doesn't get the offensive rebound, he's picking up a Cade Cunningham at half court, so he doesn't have to like sprint all the way back all the time. That's the ideal role for him. But then, okay, is he going to get through screens on Cade Cunningham? Do you have to have the surrounding talent to switch when he gets screened? That's a question. I don't know. I don't have the full answer there. But I just, his inability to create advantage really concerns me. And I think the processing is okay enough to be a connective guy here or there, but a lot of his good passes came out of the post. Now, he is a good post passer, like legitimately a really good post passer, I thought. Like, there are times where he passes out of doubles well. He has a good eye for trying to throw the most advantaged pass, but he also turned it over a lot. He just fell over a ton too. Like, he has bad balance. And again, that lack of bend, like, it's hard for him to, as he's trying to beat guys, he doesn't have enough bend to get around. And so he's kind of has to fall over because he's thinking about, bracing for these bumps and everything. So I think overall, as I think this is, we should probably start to try to wrangle this in. I think Caleb Wilson will be a good NBA player, but I think that the ceiling is way, way lower than I expected. To the extent that I'm struggling with what tier to put him in. I don't think he's this game-breaking defensive player. I don't think there's all-star offensive upside by any means. I think my perception was that this was going to be like a good, like, oh, this is a playoff riser. And there's a chance, but I'm not sure. Like, this is not, like, he's not a particularly good defensive rebounder, which is a big important thing if you're going to be a non-shooting 4 right now. So I'm just, the tough thing is that here's the tough thing for me. I think I like him better than Michael Brown, but part of me feels like I should move Michael Brown down into the tier with Braden Burries, because I feel like that's where Caleb Wilson belongs. And so that's kind of the thing I'm struggling with. But I think this is a guy you draft in the first round, probably late lottery comfortably. But for me, like 4 is just way too rich, like, which is where he's getting talked about like top 4. If he goes ahead of Cam Boozer in this draft, like, that's nasty work. I'm sorry. That to me is just a complete misunderstanding of what winning basketball is, and what it takes to be a star in the NBA right now. Physicality plus feel plus size are way more important than cool dunks. As much as I love cool dunks, as much as anybody. But when it comes to being a star, like, those are just not the things right now. Is there, like, maybe like the star outcome is like a weird version of like a Jalen Johnson type guy? Like, I don't know. It's tough for me because I don't buy the hand. Like, again, it's going to be all about physicality for him and improving his physicality. If he can get more rugged and physically stronger, then there's upsides for him to be a good offensive player. If he can't, then he's going to be a pretty limited offensive player who has to be an elite defender. So that does, like, there's at least some concern about floor. I think no matter what, he's going to have the requisite athleticism and clever feet to be someone who can guard on the perimeter enough. And again, we've seen, like, Dean Wade, not a particularly good offensive player, is like a really, really important player for a good team. I think he will be an important player for a good team. But I'm just not in love with anything here. I think, and Coop, you might convince me. Right now, he's going to fall at 7 on my board, ahead of Flemings and Michael Brown, in the same tier with Phylon, and the next guy we're going to talk about. But I'm not super comfortable with it, to be honest. Where are you at with Caleb?
Just a few closing things. I do want to say first that guys like this, huge athletes who, or just guys who are really tall, right, and like really seemingly like overvalued athletes, I think they can tend to. This isn't going to have much to do with the evaluation, but just like a value thing, they tend to get overpaid in the league to like a pretty huge degree, and they tend to get chance after chance after chance because everyone's just like, oh well, he could do this and this and this, right? Like he kind of ties back philosophically to like this very traditional idea of what potential is, which is that it's raw athleticism. And I don't think that's what potential is in the slightest. I think potential is, are you good right now? And are you special? And do you have the requisite athleticism to continue being special at the next level? I don't think Caleb Wilson has a special skill. I don't think he is like even he's really great athletically, but I don't think the athleticism is world beating level. And I just worry a lot about a lot of his development and what that's going to look like at the NBA level. He struggled a lot against like Kentucky's backup white boy freshman big who would just out sprint him down the floor every single time. And that dude sucked. Like he was not good. He was just tall and long. And if guys are going to be able to like casually beat him down the floor, and he's not going to be able to like consistently put his mark on the game, I just really struggle. I think I'm still gonna have him lottery tier. I've said a lot of really negative things about him in this podcast. And a lot of this, I think, is colored by the fact that I've taken to, instead of being on Twitter, I scroll through Instagram and I get like, oh, here's my Instagram mock draft, and it has Caleb Wilson at 2. And it's like above Cam Boozer and Darren Peterson. And I think I'm kind of mentally like arguing against this point instead of fully just like making my own point about him. But I just don't think he's this level of player, like at all. I think he's going to be good. I think these guys are overpaid because they are hard to find. I think he'll show up. He'll be able to play some ISO defense. I think you can find a scheme that works for him. He'll be able to generate you some like free rim pressure. And there's a lot of teams that just don't have a guy with this level of rim pressure. I think he can grab some rebounds. I think he can like do some stuff to like add value. But I do also kind of worry that he's going to have like a Walker Kessler rookie season where he's going to be insane and put up ridiculous stats. And then the scouting report comes out on him and it's like, oh, well, now he's just a backup for the rest of the time. But I'm probably about 90% sure that he will add backup level 4-man value and like stick in the league in the way like a Jared Vanderbilt has, right? I think that's kind of his floor. I think he'll be able to come in. He can be a good lob threat. He can be a good vertical presence, a good like rim gravity guy. And he's huge and he's athletic, and that'll be enough to stick around in the league. And this level of athleticism is rare enough that this guy is worth taking in the lottery. But I definitely have him below Michael Brown and the next guy we're going to talk about.
Yeah, that's fair. I do think the one thing I'll say is if there is a special skill, it's the length plus feet, like his, and just kind of general like weird coordination. His ability to just kind of like do stuff on the ball at times with his length and hand-eye and crazy weird footwork. That's the closest to a special skill. But anyways, I think that's good on Caleb Wilson. Like, subscribe, all that stuff on this video.
Not my favorite. Didn't love it. And then
Let's talk
offensively. Let's talk offense. Scoring. Mostly. Oh shit! Apparently my ceiling's leaking.
That's not good.
That's not good. You want to talk about this while I go check it real quick?
Yes,
Okay.
I got you.